Femi told me Buceo was his cousin. How come they are getting married? Eniola held the wedding invitation card, her hands trembling as tears rolled freely down her cheeks. Once upon a time, in a lively town called Elisa in Osun State, Nigeria, there lived a hardworking woman named Eniola. Eniola was in her early 30s, and while her life seemed steady, there was one thing that made her restless: marriage. Eniola loved her boyfriend Femi very much. Femi had promised to marry her, and she held on to that promise tightly. In Elisa, being a woman in her 30s without a husband is seen as failure. People whispered. Aunties asked questions. Even strangers gave advice she didn't ask for. One sunny evening, as Eniola arranged goods in her small shop, her neighbor, Mama Teo, walked past with a basket of vegetables. She stopped and smiled. "Eniola, my dear, how are you?" "I'm fine, Ma," Eniola replied politely. Mama Teo's smile faded. "Eniola, don't you think it's time you and Femi settled down? You know, at your age, people start to talk. They say," she hesitated, then leaned in. "They say maybe it's your character." Eniola's chest tightened, but she forced a smile. "It will happen soon, Ma." Mama Teo nodded and walked away, leaving Eniola feeling the weight of her words. That evening, Femi visited her shop. His smile always lifted her spirits. "My Eniola," he said, sitting on the wooden bench outside. "You work too hard. You know I can't wait to marry you and take care of you properly." Eniola smiled, but her heart ached. She needed his words to be true. "I can't wait either, Femi. Everyone is always asking me when I'll settle down." Femi chuckled. "Don't worry about what people say. They'll soon see us together as husband and wife. Trust me." Eniola's smile returned, and for a moment, the weight on her chest eased. Just then, Buceo walked up to them. She was Femi's supposed cousin, as he had introduced. Buceo was younger, and in her mid-20s, she had a fresh, vibrant look. Buceo wore a bright yellow ochre dress, and her braids were neatly styled into a bun. "Ah, Buceo," Eniola said warmly. "Come and sit with us." Buceo laughed, her voice light and cheerful. "I can't stay long. I just came to remind Femi of something." Eniola smiled. Buceo was so sweet and friendly that Eniola had started seeing her as a potential sister-in-law. "Don't worry, Eniola," Buceo said with a playful grin. "Very soon you'll be my sister officially. Femi is so lucky to have you." Eniola blushed. Femi smiled. "Ah, Buceo, you're always pushing me." "Don't worry, everything is on track," he said, standing up. "I'll call you later, Eniola." As Eniola watched Femi and Buceo leave, she felt hopeful. She was sure that her time had finally come. The afternoon was quiet, with only the distant chatter of market women and the occasional sound of cars passing by. Eniola sat behind the counter of her shop, organizing tins of powdered milk and sardines. She hummed a tune as she worked, her mind on Femi's business plan. Buceo walked into the shop, her bright smile lighting up the room. She wore a simple but colorful green ochre gown, and her hair was styled in neat cornrows that framed her slender face. "Eniola, my sister," Buceo said warmly, clapping her hands together. "How are you today?" "Buceo," Eniola replied, smiling back. "I'm fine, oh. What about you?" "I'm fine too," Buceo said, leaning on the counter. She looked around the shop, her eyes lingering on the neat shelves. "Your shop is always so clean and well-stocked. You're really a hard worker, Eniola." "What can I do? I have to keep pushing," Eniola said, shrugging. "You know, the struggle is not easy." Buceo gave her an encouraging look. "That's why Femi is lucky to have you. He's always saying how hardworking and smart you are." Eniola blushed, her smile growing wider. "He says that?" "Of course. He's always praising you," Buceo said. She paused, then added with a mischievous grin, "But I told him that if he doesn't hurry up and marry you, someone else might take you away." Eniola laughed, shaking her head. Nobody will take me. Femi is my one and only. Buseo nodded, her expression soft. And you're his. You're such a good woman, Eniola. I'm sure he's just waiting for the right time. The words gave Eniola a sense of peace. She trusted Buseo, and their growing friendship made her feel like she was already part of Femi's family. Just then, Femi entered the shop, carrying a folder in his hand. He wore a crisp white shirt and dark blue trousers, his face serious but handsome as always. "My two favorite women," he said, setting the folder on the counter. "What are you talking about?" "Your wedding, of course," Buseo teased. "I'm reminding Eniola that she will soon be my sister-in-law." Femi chuckled and looked at Eniola. "Buseo won't let us rest, will she? But she's right. We'll make it happen soon." Eniola smiled, her cheeks warm with happiness. "I trust you, Femi." Buseo grinned and gestured toward the folder. "What's this?" The business plan," Femi replied. "I wanted to show Eniola everything. She's been so supportive, and I want her to see how serious I am." Eniola leaned closer as Femi flipped through the pages, showing her charts and lists. She didn't understand all the details, but she trusted him completely. Buseo looked over her shoulder, nodding with approval. "This is impressive, Femi. Eniola, you're about to build something big with him." Eniola smiled, feeling hopeful. With Femi's plan and Buseo's encouragement, she was sure she was making the right choice. Eniola sat at the wooden table in her shop, her savings book open in front of her. The sun streamed through the window, lighting up the tidy shelves of provisions behind her. She had worked so hard to save this money. Every naira was earned through long days of selling and careful spending. Her thoughts were interrupted when Femi walked in, carrying his usual black folder. He wore a navy blue shirt tucked into his trousers, his smile bright as he approached her. "Eniola, my queen," he said, sitting down across from her. "How are you today?" "I'm fine," Eniola replied, closing the savings book. "I was just thinking about everything you told me last time. The business plan." Femi's face lit up. "That's why I love you, Eniola. You always think about the future. Our future." He placed the folder on the table and opened it, showing her neatly typed pages. "I've finalized everything. The budget, the profits, and the timeline. Once we start, it will only take 3 months to see results." 3 months? Eniola asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," Femi said confidently. "It's all here in the plan. We just need the starting capital." Eniola hesitated. "How much do you need, Femi?" Femi looked her in the eye, his tone calm but firm. 2 million naira. Eniola gasped softly. 2 million? That's a lot of money, Femi. "I know," Femi replied quickly. "But this is not just about money. It's an investment. Once the business grows, we'll make double or even triple. And then we can finally plan our wedding. Isn't that what we both want?" The mention of their wedding made Eniola's heart flutter. She imagined herself in a white gown, standing beside Femi, finally putting all the whispers and judgments behind her. "Femi," she began, her voice soft, "you know I've been saving for a long time. Almost everything I have is in this shop. But if it's for our future, I'm willing to help." Femi reached for her hands, holding them gently. "Thank you, Eniola. You don't know how much this means to me. To us." At that moment, Buseo walked in, her vibrant Ankara gown swaying as she moved. Her smile brightened the room. "What are you two lovebirds talking about?" she teased, sitting beside Eniola. "Femi's business," Eniola replied with a small smile. "He needs some money to start it." Buseo's eyes lit up as she looked at Eniola. "Eniola, you are such a strong woman. Femi is lucky to have you. I told him he doesn't deserve someone as good as you." "Buseo," Femi said with a laugh, "stop embarrassing me." "I'm only saying the truth," Buseo said, nudging Eniola playfully. "You're going to build something amazing with Femi. I'm so proud of you." Eniola felt her confidence grow. With Femi's plan and Buseo's encouragement, she was sure this was the right decision. That evening, She withdrew almost all her savings and handed it to Femi. "Use it wisely," she said softly, watching him put the money into his folder. "Don't worry," Femi replied, his smile as bright as ever. "I promise, Eniola, you won't regret this." As she locked her shop that night, Eniola felt a mix of nervousness and hope. She believed in Femi. She believed in their future. Weeks passed, and Eniola noticed small changes in Femi's behavior. He visited her shop less often and spent more time with Buseo. When she asked about the business, his answers became vague. One afternoon, Eniola sat outside her shop, watching the busy street. Children ran past, laughing, and women carrying baskets of goods gossiped as they walked. She had been trying to reach Femi all morning, but his phone was switched off. Mama Teo, her nosy neighbor, stopped by. She carried a small basket of tomatoes and peppers. "Eniola, my dear, how are you?" she asked, her voice warm but sharp. "I'm fine, Ma," Eniola replied politely. Mama Teo squinted, leaning closer. "Are you and Femi fighting? I saw him with Buseo yesterday. They looked very close." Eniola's stomach twisted. "Close how, Ma?" she asked, forcing a calm tone. "They were laughing and holding hands," Mama Teo said bluntly. "But I'm sure it's nothing. She's his cousin." "Yes, Ma," Eniola replied, her smile tight. "She's his cousin." Mama Teo shrugged and walked away, but her words stayed with Eniola. She tried to shake off the feeling of unease. Femi and Buseo were family. There was no reason to doubt them. Later that evening, Femi finally called. Eniola, sorry I missed your calls." "I've been busy with the business," he said quickly. "Busy with the business?" Eniola asked. "You haven't told me anything about it in weeks, Femi. What's going on?" Femi sighed. "Eniola, you need to trust me. Everything is under control. I'm working hard for us." "But I've given you everything, Femi," Eniola said, her voice breaking slightly. "I need to know what's happening." "Don't start this now," Femi said sharply. "I said I'll take care of it, and I will." Eniola felt tears sting her eyes. "Okay," she said softly. "I trust you." The next day, Buseo came to the shop, her smile as bright as always. She brought a small gift, a colorful scarf. "Eniola, you're always working so hard," Buseo said. "You deserve a treat." "Thank you," Eniola said, forcing a smile. Buseo sat on the bench outside. "Femi has been so busy lately. You know, this business is really important to him. He keeps saying how lucky he is to have someone like you." "Really?" Eniola asked, her doubts softening slightly. "Yes, of course," Buseo said warmly. "Don't worry too much. Everything will work out. You'll see." But as Buseo left, Eniola couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The distance between her and Femi was growing, and her trust was starting to crack. It was a hot and restless afternoon when Eniola's world began to unravel. She sat in her shop, fanning herself with a magazine. Femi had been distant for weeks now, and her doubts were starting to consume her. Just as she was about to close for the day, a familiar voice startled her. "Eniola, good evening," Mama Teo said, peeking into the shop with a sly smile. "Good evening, Ma," Eniola replied, trying to sound cheerful. "Did you hear?" Mama Teo asked, stepping closer. "There's a big wedding happening soon. The family is keeping it quiet, but I heard it's Buseo. And guess who the groom is?" Eniola froze, her fan falling from her hand. "Buseo?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Buseo is getting married," Mama Teo continued, lowering her voice. "And the groom is Femi." The words hit Eniola like a slap. "No, that can't be true," she said, shaking her head. "Femi is supposed to marry me." Mama Teo raised her eyebrows. "I don't know, but I saw them at the tailor shop yesterday, picking fabrics for the wedding." Eniola felt her chest tighten. "Excuse me, Ma," she said, rushing out of the shop. Her heart pounded as she walked quickly toward Femi's apartment. She didn't know what she was going to say, but she needed answers. When she arrived, the door was slightly open. She hesitated, then stepped inside. Voices floated from the living room. "Everything is ready," Buceo was saying. "The invitations are printed, and the caterer is booked." "Good," Femi replied. "Once we're married, we'll leave for the UK immediately." Eniola's money was enough to cover everything. Eniola stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat. She peeked around the corner and saw them sitting close together on the couch. Buceo was holding a stack of invitations, and Femi had his arm draped casually over her shoulder. Her eyes fell on the invitation cards. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Femi, what is this?" They both turned, startled. Buceo quickly hid the invitations behind her back, but it was too late. Eniola had seen enough. "Eniola," Femi began, standing up. "I can't explain." "Explain what?" Eniola shouted, tears streaming down her face. "You told me she was your cousin. You promised to marry me. Is this what you've been doing with my money?" Buceo looked at Eniola with a smirk. "Calm down, Eniola. It's not that serious." "Not that serious?" Eniola's voice cracked. "I gave you everything, Femi. I believed in you." Femi sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, Eniola, you're a good woman, but you're not what I want. You're too old. Buceo is young, fresh. She's the one I want to build my life with." The words cut through Eniola like a knife. She stumbled back, gripping the wall for support. "So, you've been lying to me all this time? Using me?" Femi shrugged. "It's not personal. I needed money, and you had it. You should be proud you helped us start a new life." Eniola stared at them, her chest heaving. Her vision blurred with tears as she turned and ran out of the apartment. The world around her seemed to spin, but one thought echoed in her mind. She had been a fool. Eniola didn't go home that night. Instead, she wandered the streets of her small town, her mind replaying Femi's cruel words over and over again. By the time she returned to her shop the next morning, her eyes were swollen, and her steps were heavy. Neighbors passed by, greeting her warmly. But Eniola barely noticed. The shame, the betrayal, it was too much to bear. She sat behind the counter, staring blankly at the shelves. Hours passed before Femi appeared at her shop, his expression calm, as if nothing had happened. Buceo followed behind him, her smile as bright as ever. "Eniola," Femi said, stepping inside. "We need to talk." Eniola looked up slowly, her face pale and exhausted. "Talk? What is there to talk about, Femi?" Femi sighed, pulling out a chair. "You shouldn't have come to my house like that yesterday. You embarrassed me." "Embarrassed you?" Eniola said, her voice rising. "You lied to me? You told me Buceo was your cousin. You took my money for a wedding I didn't know about. And now you sit here, talking about embarrassment?" Buceo stepped forward, her tone sweet but condescending. "Eniola, I know you're upset, but you have to understand. Femi and I love each other. We didn't mean to hurt you, but—" "Stop it, Buceo." Eniola snapped, standing up. "Don't pretend like you care. You knew all along, didn't you? You both played me like a fool." Femi raised a hand, his voice firm. "Enough, Eniola. It's not my fault you were desperate. You were so eager to marry that you didn't even see the signs. If anything, you should be thanking me for keeping you hopeful." Eniola's breath caught in her throat. She stared at Femi, her heart breaking all over again. "You're a wicked man," she whispered. "How could you do this to me?" Femi shrugged. "Life is not fair, Eniola. I had to do what was best for me." Buceo chuckled softly, her arms crossed. "Eniola, you're a good person. I'm sure you'll find someone else. Maybe someone closer to your age." The word stung, but Eniola held her ground. "Get out of my shop," she said, her voice trembling but firm. Femi stood, his expression cold. "Fine, but don't make this harder than it has to be. Move on with your life, Eniola. You're not the first woman to be disappointed." Without another word, Femi and Buceo turned and walked out, leaving Eniola standing in the middle of her shop. Her chest heaved as she tried to hold back the tears. For the first time, Eniola didn't feel anger or sadness. She felt empty. The days after Femi and Buseo's betrayal were the hardest of Eniola's life. She barely left her shop and avoided everyone. She could feel the whispers from neighbors as she walked past. The pity in their eyes was unbearable. Mama Teo stopped by one afternoon, her face filled with concern. "Eniola, you've not been yourself lately. Are you okay?" Eniola forced a small smile. "I'm fine, Ma." Mama Teo sighed and sat on the wooden bench outside the shop. "I know what happened," she said gently. "This town talks too much. But don't let it break you, my dear. People will always talk." Eniola nodded, but her throat felt tight. "It's not just what people say, Ma. I gave him everything. I trusted him. Now I have nothing left." Mama Teo patted her hand. "You have your dignity, Eniola. Don't let them take that too. This is a lesson, my child, not the end of your story." As the older woman left, Eniola sat in silence, her mind racing. She thought of the nights she had stayed up counting her savings, dreaming of a better life with Femi. She thought of the lies, the promises, and the betrayal. Later that evening, Eniola decided to close her shop early. As she locked the doors, a group of young women passed by, laughing and chatting. One of them stopped and said, "Auntie Eniola, good evening." Eniola managed a smile. "Good evening, my dear." The girl hesitated before saying, "Auntie, I just want to say you're very strong. I heard what happened, but you still hold your head high. Not many people can do that." Eniola's heart softened at the words. She realized she wasn't as invisible as she thought. That night, she sat in her small room, staring at the empty savings box that once held her dreams. Tears fell freely as she whispered to herself, "I won't let this define me." Eniola knew she couldn't undo what had happened, but she could decide how to move forward. Slowly, she began to rebuild her life, one step at a time. She worked harder in her shop, saved again, and refused to let the weight of shame crush her. Though the scars of betrayal remained, Eniola learned an important lesson. Not everyone who promises you the world means it. And sometimes, the only person you can truly depend on is yourself. Months passed, and Eniola's life slowly began to return to normal. The whispers in the town faded, replaced by the everyday bustle of life. People still talked about Femi and Buseo's wedding, but Eniola refused to let it bother her anymore. The story of Eniola, Femi, and Buseo teaches a powerful lesson about trust, self-worth, and resilience. It reminds us to be cautious about whom we trust, as not everyone who makes promises has honorable intentions. Eniola's journey also shows the importance of self-reliance and the strength to rebuild after betrayal. True happiness and success come not from relying on others, but from believing in oneself and staying true to one's values. In relationships, actions speak louder than words. Before investing emotionally or financially, ensure the other person's intentions align with honesty and mutual respect. Most importantly, never let the betrayal of others define your worth or dictate your future. Always rise above and move forward with dignity. What's your biggest takeaway from Eniola's story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss stories like this that inspire and teach valuable lessons. If you've experienced a similar situation, let us know how you overcame it. Your story might inspire someone today.